ladies, and gentlemen. I saw a couple. Are y'all gentlemen? You girls ready?
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready, I think. Let me take a deep breath. You know, I want Kevin to run for president. I feel like the president's here.
Yeah.
I've been telling him that though since '97. He hasn't done it yet. What's the deal? Okay. Anyway, he's got my vote. Brady for president. Now I'm done with that, okay? Now, who's talking while I'm talking? Raise your hand. Can you tell I used to teach?
No kidding.
Here we go. If I didn't know him, I'd have to be real formal. But I was telling Sarah, where'd you go? And thanks to Sarah and Todd for getting him here. I was telling Sarah I just drove in from Florida last night, 10 hours, thank you, with my Chihuahua. And I was looking through magazines and articles and different things because my mother was a pack rat, and y'all already know she passed away, so I was going through all of her stuff. There was a yellow newspaper on the front, Kevin Brady, with a lot of hair. I should have brought it. I meant to bring it. I wanted to show him. It's turned yellow. She kept it all that time. Anyway, for y'all you don't know me, which I don't know who that could be, but my name's Carol Gooch, and I'm the founder and executive director of MCABW. And I'd like to welcome all the new members. Can you raise your hand? Awesome. How many guests do we have? Lots of guests, yes. Thank y'all for coming. I had several men call me and wanted to make reservations, and I said, this is a ladies' association. I knew they wanted to come hear you, and I said, oh, he's just coming by to thank us for everything. They went, oh, okay, bye. They hung up. But anyway, I wanted Kevin to hear a couple little things real quick so he would know about what y'all do. It's not about me. I'm a Leadership Montgomery County graduate of '03, and what you learn is there's no I in the word team. You know, we are a team, and all of y'all is what's made MCABW what it is. 5 years is pretty good, so I'm told, for a group of ladies in the area. 5 years, that's a long time. We started August '05 with 52 ladies at the Conroe Chamber. We met in their boardroom. And now we have over 300. So we're growing and going, and thanks to you. And as y'all know, we do fundraisers for our nonprofit organizations every quarter. I think we've about covered most of our nonprofits in Montgomery County. And we offer scholarships to female graduating seniors of Montgomery County and our local ladies who want to continue their education. And once Congressman Brady is through, I'll go over about our scholarship fundraiser, which is September 30th, and I hope all of y'all can come to that. You can come too. Anyway, my board real quick so you'll know who's helped me through all of these 2 in the morning. Stephanie Lavalette. She's the executive treasurer and secretary, the one that you get all your emails from. PCL Travel, resumes by Stephanie. We have Gloria Copeland, Unique Home Inspection. Janet Werner, appointed, did I say it right?
Got it.
Appointed Financial. Public Relations. Free Kid, who will take your picture and put it everywhere. Watch out. And just real quick, would you just stand where you are if you're one of our leadership team? I want Kevin Brady to see our leadership team.
Team leaders.
Here you go, leadership team leaders, Stephanie.
These ladies have been a very important part of our organization for the past year and even longer. We have Carolyn Griffin with Amity Bank, Marilyn Kazmierski with the Lone Star Family Clinic. We have Phyllis Del Pico, who handles our networking. She is phyllisdelpico.com. Thank you, ladies.
Ladies Night Out Chair.
Oh, and Donna Wick is also here. She is our Ladies Night Out Chair.
I know it's kind of hard hard to see, but you know, it's real pretty with the lights out and the candle. And we want to thank, and Gloria is going to thank. Gloria's loud, aren't you? You don't need this?
I don't need that.
Would you thank the little five over here, and Carol and everybody?
Carol Lucario with Carol's Catering is the one that made our cake, our number 5. And Ann, where's Ann? Ann. Strauss that has done all this wonderful decorating that made.
Happy birthday.
Yes. That made incredible pizza incredible.
Thank you, ladies. And I don't have to tell Congressman Brady much more about us because he can read it right here. Here's what we do. And this is all the good things. And I tell you what, though, so that you'll know our ladies are real loyal to each other. They really will use our online directory and call when they need something. And then I get phone calls that says, we don't have a lady in our association that does such and such. So I go find one and she joins and we use them. So that's how we help each other grow our business. And that's why I think we've been so successful. And I want to thank everybody that advertises in our little magazine now, because if it weren't for y'all, we wouldn't get our name out to over 11,000 people. So the advertisers are going to have a thank you celebration from me on December the 2nd, and I've already emailed all of them, because this wouldn't be possible without you. So I appreciate that too. Now, I was in Fort Walton Beach, Destin, Panama City when President Obama landed the other day. Y'all remember when he landed up to go? Well, you know, that was just okay, but are you not excited we have Congressman Kevin Brady? I'm going to get this out so I don't mess up. Where is it? I don't mess up too much, you know that, right? Here we go. I want to thank Sheriff Gage for protecting us today.
Yeah.
He had the prettiest hair. Oh, anyway. Let me get back on task.
Prettier than Kevin's.
Okay, I don't want to mess this up, so here goes. Congressman Kevin Brady, for you guys that are new to the area, has represented our region well in the U.S. House of Representatives, key leadership positions in both the House Ways and Means Committee and the Joint Economic Committee. So he's really out there helping us with all this health care that I know all of y'all are worried about. And he's going to talk about that today, the jobs, the economy, and so forth. I also want you to know right here, if I can see with, you know, I had those lenses put in, y'all. I'm working on it. I'm trying to look good without my glasses right now. From his post on the Joint Economic Committee, Congressman Brady brings his small business background as a Chamber of Commerce director, which we can remember back in the day, as we say, to argue for free market solutions to get America's economy back on track. He's a husband, a father. They live right there in the Woodlands. They have 2 sons, right?
Yep.
2 sons, Will and Sean. And I have to tell you, that's what's so awesome. He travels back and forth to Washington, D.C., but he's local and he's always doing for the community. So I'm going to turn it out over to Congressman Kevin Brady.
Carol, thank you. Thanks for having me here today. What a great turnout. But I really wanted to come today and just congratulate you on 5 years of leadership and doing great things in Montgomery County. Those of you in small business know that 5 years is sort of the important mark. You know what I mean? You start small, you work hard, you spend a lot of hours and weekends and a lot of risks to grow your business or your organization. And the 5-year mark is really sort of where you hit that milestone, where you're here to stay, where you put all the pieces in place and you're ready to move on and grow even stronger from there. That's where this association is. And I wanted to, where'd Carol go?
She's going to the back.
Man, you're fast. It's like a movie. Carol is a force of nature, wonderful leadership. Carol, thank you for all you do. Join me in thanking all the leaders. And I'm going to tell you, before I tell you a couple really great things about yourself, let me just say The sheriff does have beautiful hair. But more importantly than that, he really does a wonderful job of protecting our families, our communities, our businesses in a county that's growing by leaps and bounds, now approaching 500,000 people. Means more challenges in law enforcement each and every day. The sheriff meets every one of those challenges. Tommy, thank you so much. You know, some of the things, my guess is, this association, like many others, is doing so many things. You're always on to the next thing. You don't think much about what you've accomplished. But you think about not just the scholarships you've given to young people, but the support you give, for example, for Children's Safe Harbor, which is just this great program developed because a number of people in the community, including our sheriff and others, realized that children who were abused, the system was almost abusing them a second time. They would have to retell these terrible stories over and over again. Oftentimes, over time, they would change, they would shut down, they would just, it got harder and harder. And oftentimes, because of that, not only were they victimized again, but you didn't have the evidence to prosecute, ultimately, the abuser. Well, Children's Safe Harbor was set up to make sure that that child only had to tell that story one time. That they had a support group around them where that would help not make it worse, but make it better. And the support you give to Children's Safe Harbor, you know, not only helps them and the family, but it helps put some bad people behind jails where they belong. What's interesting is that the reason we have these children's assessment centers, as they're called, around the state is because of Montgomery County. Sandra Martin was a woman who invited me to meet with a bunch of grandparents who were taking care of their grandchildren because their parents, unfortunately, had just taken a wrong path. And she invited me to this picnic out at North Shore Park. And I met all these parents who are struggling to raise their kids, some of whom have been abused. From that discussion, we started looking at what happens to kids when they are in this terrible situation. We learned about sort of the re-victimization of them. So over time, we wrote the legislation. I passed it through the Texas legislature to create a network of children's advocacy centers around the state to create 10 each year in partnership with the local community. Now, as a result of one woman in Montgomery County who felt like there was a better way to help kids, now we have these centers all throughout the state helping a lot of kids. It really started, the first one didn't start here, but the impetus to apply it across this great state did. Another group you helped, March of Dimes, same thing. Actually, you may not know this, but the Texas Birth Defects Registry, which is where we identify where these birth defects are occurring, we investigate them, and we try to prevent them in the future, started here from a woman in Montgomery County as well. Ann Andis came into my office when I was a state legislator. She and her husband Dave had a little baby born with anencephaly, without a brain, fully developed brain. And she had with her a, you know those 3x5 note cards in those little boxes we all used to have before we had these and the telephone, cell phones, PDA. And she explained how the baby had been born and the outpouring she got, an outreach from around the state, other parents who had experienced children born with birth defects. And she had a whole card file of these families. And Texas was, for a major state, didn't have a birth defects registry. We knew there were clusters of babies born in West Texas with extra digits. We knew there were clusters of babies born with anencephaly along the border. Those along the ship channel were born with stomach ulcers as young as babies, as infants. But we had no clue where it was really occurring cross-state or why. And so because of Ann Andis from Montgomery County, bringing a little 3x5 note card, we went to Austin, wrote the legislation to create the Birth Defects Registry, funded it, and now, almost 15 years later, not only now do we know where these birth defects are occurring, we now know because the investigation's why, and now, 15 years after this woman decided in Montgomery County she wanted to make a difference, babies are being born healthy to moms and dads across the state of Texas, all because of one woman who stepped forward. We have tremendous power. I mean, Montgomery County is really unique, but we have among you, not just as business leaders and entrepreneurs, but as women, the ability to change this entire state, if not more. You know, when we step forward, this organization is one of those that fosters that understands that with networking and bringing out the best ideas and encouraging each other, we can always do so much more than we can just by ourselves. So I came here today primarily to thank you for all your service to the community and to say congratulations on your 5th birthday. And I hope you have many, many more. And that is a cool cake. Let me just tell you right there. I haven't seen many like that. So hey, let me talk real quickly about a couple things. The jobs, the deficit, which is scaring a lot of people, and the healthcare bill. The jobs, the economy right now, it's frustrating because no country bounces back out of a recession faster than the United States of America. We are, as Americans, almost genetically predisposed to bouncing back. We hate being in down times, and we just do. But normally our recovery is fast. It's not happening that way this time. It's very, very slow. It's 3 times slower than our recovery in '81 and '82, the closest, most severe recession to this one. And I think what's frustrating is that things are starting to pick up through last holidays, and then the first quarter, our growth dropped by half. Now it's dropped again last quarter. This quarter, everyone's downgrading where we're going. So we've really started to level off in a fairly low pace. Small businesses are still laying people off, not adding them, which they should be at this point in the recovery. Consumer confidence is at an 18-month low. We're actually back almost a year and a half. Consumers confident to go into stores and buy again. You may be seeing this in your store. We're fortunate in Texas and more importantly in Montgomery County to have stronger growth and I think stronger fundamentals than maybe anywhere in the rest of this country. But still, as a nation, we've really there is a worry we're going back into a second recession. There's about a 25% chance, but I don't think we do. But there's some things contributing to it we've got to change. One of them is consumers are frightened. I think not just by the jobs, but they look at all the debt this country has. They know someone has to pay all that back, so they are wisely saving. They're holding their money. Our savings rate is 3 times higher than it was 2 years ago. People are they're buying what they need. Maybe if they have to buy a big ticket item, they do it, but they're being very cautious as families right now. Businesses are as well. Businesses which normally lead your way out of a recession aren't this time. At this point, they should be rehiring workers they laid off, hiring new ones, buying that new piece of equipment, making that expansion plan. This is where we ought to be, but they're not. In fact, they're holding on. Companies are holding on to over $2 trillion of cash right now. They are, as County Judge Ed Emmett likes to say during hurricanes, they are hunkered down and not moving forward. And what they tell us is that they are very worried about what's coming out of Washington. They worry about what the health care costs will do for new employees that they hire. They worry about things that drive up energy prices, like the cap and trade legislation or the drilling moratorium, which is costing us in our region a great deal. They're worried about higher taxes, and there are a slew of new taxes proposed on small businesses and professionals and companies. And they're just worried about sort of it's sort of this business bashing you hear out of Washington all the time. As a result, what businesses tell me, and I meet with them, I took on a new role last year as the top Republican in the House on the Joint Economic Committee. So we study the economy literally every day and meet with every business I can try to meet with. And what they tell me is that they're standing pat. As they said, it is hard enough to predict the market. Trying to predict the market in Washington is impossible. So we're just going to hold on to our money. We're going to see how things go. We're just not going to move. Until we get jobs created on Main Street, until we get those companies investing again, we're not going to pull them out of this as strong as we should. The stimulus, unfortunately, did not work. over almost $1 trillion when you count, because we had to borrow all of it. And we paid back $1 trillion, a huge amount of money. I always explain to people, to put $1 trillion in perspective, if you and I started a small business the day our Lord was born, and we lost $1 million each and every day, we wouldn't yet be to our first $1 trillion. That is how much money that is, and we spent that. Very little job creation. We were told, look, if you pass this bill, unemployment will never go above 8%. It's way over that, and it would be worse, except that 1 million people in the last 3 months just dropped out, gave up looking for work. They said we'll have 137 million Americans working by the end of this year. Nowhere close, not even in the ballpark. And finally, they said we'll use this money, we'll create jobs along Main Street, not government jobs. But in truth, instead of 90% being created among you, just the opposite. Private businesses, small businesses have lost almost 3.5 million jobs. The only sector that's gained, federal government workers. One, we have good people in the federal government. I can tell you we work with them day in, day out, Social Security Administration and different organizations. But the problem with government jobs is they only last as long as you as taxpayers will pay their salaries. Recoveries, economic recoveries, come from business people who hire that new worker or make that expansion plan or create that new salesman to generate economic recovery. So until we do that, again, until government, I'm convinced the biggest obstacle to our recovery as a country is Washington. If we can get them out of the way and turn your power loose, and I do. I just have more faith in you to create that job than I do in the government to do it. And I know what the power of those of you in this room is. The deficit, one of the reasons I think are, in the drilling moratorium, perfect example, bad policy, very damaging to our region. We will lose, if it goes to the end of November, we will lose tens and tens of thousands of workers. Many small businesses will not make it all the way, like Blackhawk Specialty Tools, small business, started 3 years ago, family-owned company, has 50 workers, and they were adding workers. Well, in the first month, they told us we laid off 20% of our workforce. Second month, we laid off half. We don't know if we're going to make it through November, and their point was this: what business do you know of that can survive 6 months without revenue? Probably none in this room. Probably not many anywhere. But that's what a lot of our companies are facing, because every rig that leaves the Gulf of Mexico takes with it some 1,000 jobs, directly and indirectly, and almost 1,000 vendors who sell products to that and services to that rig. So the impact goes not just along a few counties in the Gulf, but all throughout the state and the Gulf of Mexico, these states. And in Texas, I took a look at it because, I always feel like we've diversified our economy. We do a lot more things now, in healthcare and services and trade, energy, or business finance, all that. But in Texas, a quarter of our economy is still the energy area, and even greater here in regions like ours. So this drilling moratorium is very damaging. I've asked the president by letter a month ago, come down to Houston. Come meet with our energy workers and these small businesses in energy. Don't have the press there, don't have any politicians there. You just sit down in a room like this and listen to them. Tell you about the damage of the drilling moratorium. Unfortunately, it's been a month now. I know he's been to Florida a couple times, Carol. And I know the spill, has been a major issue. But we've not even yet gotten a response come down here. I know he's been in Texas, and all we're saying is, look, this drilling moratorium is making an environmental disaster into an economic disaster. It needs to end now. The moratorium needs to end now. By the way, we've got September 1, a rally for energy workers here in Houston that I would invite you to. George R. Brown Center, because we're going to put a face on American energy workers, because Washington, it's weird. Washington will jump through hoops to save auto workers' jobs, some 750,000 auto workers around the country. But 9 million energy jobs, they don't seem to care at all. We need to put a face on Texas and American energy workers. This rally is one way to do that. We would love to have you involved as an organization or individuals. The deficit, again, one of the things families tell me, and I live back here, as Carol said, Kath and I have two little boys. We have a second grader and a sixth grader. They started school yesterday. My wife looks 10 years younger. It really does, I'm telling you. The boys had the summer of their life. They don't know it yet, but they had the summer of their life. And she is exhausted. Anyway, but I live here, commute to work to Washington. I've done that now for 14 years. So we stay close to the families, the communities we represent. Plus, we want to raise our boys as Texans, not Washingtonians or whatever. But families, people who stop at the grocery store or at the practice, ball practice with kids, or at the dry cleaners, this worries them the most. And I think it ought to, because the deficit, we are on a path that isn't just unsustainable. That sounds so passive. It is a catastrophe moving forward. Right now, we are, if you look at, Congress didn't even do a budget this year, first time in 40 years. So the president's budget over the next 10 years is almost $1 trillion a year more added to the national debt. $1 trillion each and every year for a decade. Here's the problem, and why it affects you, is that this is the way the deficit's going and what we owe. The way they compare a country's financial shape is they compare how much you owe as a country compared to your economy, your GDP. And they, right now, we're in the yellow zone. We're about 62%. We owe about 2/3 equivalent of our whole economy. Well, in less than 10 years, in fact, about 5 years, if we don't change our ways as a country, if Congress doesn't change its ways, we're almost at 100%. That is a big red zone, and here's what happens. Every economist tells us, when a country gets above 90% of their debt compared to their whole economy, it starts to drag down their economy in a major way. The difference is, the equivalent is, if we hit that mark, is the difference between Europe's sluggish 2.5% growth each year. They barely, get above break even every year, versus America's go steady 3.5% growth or so, where we create jobs, create opportunities. So if we do that, economists say you lose about 1 full percentage point in your growth, which means you cut your prosperity by 1/3. You have 1/3 fewer jobs for your young people, 1/3 fewer opportunities for entrepreneurs like yourself. It is a huge drag on your economy, because because your interest debts, it's like adding a second mortgage, full mortgage, to your family budget. What would that do? Well, it takes all your resources. Leaves you scrambling just to cover those interest payments, instead of putting it for your money toward your dreams and hopes and goals and family. That's what happens at the U.S. level. And the worry, of course, is who pays all this back. And right now there is, if you listen real carefully, you might be able to hear what's now being called the tax bomb. On January 1st, almost $4 trillion of higher taxes will come into being on families, on small businesses, cutting the child tax credit so it's more expensive to raise your children, bringing back the marriage penalty, which taxed you more if you were married than if you were single. Makes no sense whatsoever. Increase on capital gains and dividends, and the death tax, which is still the number one reason small businesses aren't handed down to the next generation. Number one reason women-owned businesses who are building wealth sometimes for the first time aren't able to be passed down to kids. The death tax, it needs to end. The death tax needs to die, period. So we're fighting to avoid that tax bomb, allow the Bush tax cuts to continue because it's so critical. Final point, I stopped here. This is your new health care law in America. This is amazing. I asked my Joint Economic Committee staff to go through all 2,801 pages of the new health care law after the President signed it. And I said, put it on a chart so we, the public, can see it. I also wanted the lawmakers who didn't read the bill to see what they voted for. earlier this year. This is new healthcare law. Everything in color is newly added by the bill except this. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, that's the new healthcare czar. Everything flows through that one person. They have in this bill 600 new authorities. They will weigh in on everything from the treatments you receive to the coverage you can have to how much you must pay and offer as a small business to your workers. They are all encompassing. All the dark blue dots here is expanded government. The orange circles represent new institutions that ultimately will have the power to ration health care, either treatments, limiting reimbursements to our local doctors and home health care agencies and hospitals. Everything in green are new taxes or cuts to Medicare, $1 trillion of new taxes and cuts to Medicare. Our seniors are going to pay the greatest price on those Medicare cuts, and our businesses are going to pay the heaviest price on those taxes. So much so, we have so many new taxes. The IRS, it's estimated, will have to hire 16,000 new agents to force compliance with all the taxes. Here's the new mandates in yellow. The light blue is expansion of government in the free market system. And here's the bottom line. We couldn't fit all this bill on one chart. This represents a third of the complexity of this bill. So we created, if this were a computer screen, it's not, and we don't have it up on our computer representation, but if this board was a smart board, we created what we call bundles of bureaucracy that we couldn't actually fit on the chart. If you punch this, up would come 22 other government bureaucracies we couldn't fit on here. Here are 59 new federal grant programs under this. This is 19 new special interest provisions. Remember they cut all those deals on Christmas Eve in that dark room in the Senate to get it passed, the Louisiana Purchase, exempting Florida from Medicare Advantage cuts, the 5 special provisions for AARP, those are there, and then the 17 insurance mandates, which some of them are very good. They all drive up costs. They all drive up the price of health care. So at the end of the day, you look at something that's going to cost $2.5 trillion that won't lower health care costs. It creates all this new bureaucracy. This is all addition. This doesn't replace health care. This is on top of what we have today. And so the question is, you look at this, is that really the health care reform most people want in America? I mean, most of us in small business, I know at the Chamber of Commerce, we struggle to provide health care for our workers. We couldn't pay for the families. It was just too expensive to do that. But it was a yearly struggle because the increases were always so high. You're trying to figure out, you raise the deductible, do you ask them to carry more of it themselves? I mean, you would change. You would change companies, try to get that low rate to begin with, just anything to survive. We've got to have health care reform. I'm just not convinced this was the answer for the United States of America. So anyway, got a big challenge. It's now the law of the land. And by the way, to tell you how meticulous we were, if you look at all these lines, these are new relationships. The black lines are new regulation, red is new reporting, green is new money flows, gray is new structural. If you look closely, if you come to our website and pull up this chart and really look at it, you'll notice that in every one of these lines and relationships, embedded in there, in the tiny little numbers of the exact section of the bill that created. We were so meticulous, we wanted the country to actually see how all this is supposed to work together, lower health care costs. I'm not sure we got it.